In this segment, navigating the control panel will help you get a more in-depth understanding of the control panel. You'll be shown how to navigate, so to speak, the buttons and the LCD menus that will help you later get to functions that you need to use as you're using the machine later on. Following that, we'll show you some key and neat functions that will enhance your cutting capabilities. But first, let's review briefly each button and its function. First is the LCD readout. This basically tells you what the plotter needs or is thinking at the time. The function keys, these will allow you to choose certain functions that are going to be displayed on the LCD. You'll see this as we go through the video. The power light just allows you to know that the power is on. The prompt light will display when something minor is wrong. For instance, when the tool is off the drawing area, it'll turn red. Arrow keys have two functions. First, moving the head to a new location, and then second, changing values on the LCD screen. For instance, certain menu options ask you to increase or decrease a value. Well, you use these arrow keys to do that. The option keys down at the bottom are chosen because they're the most commonly used. For instance, making copies, changing or setting your cutting conditions. Next, we'll loop through the different menu options, and then pause will pause the cutting, and then also allow you to get into the menu options. And of course, you use the next key to go ahead and loop through those different menu options or cycle through them. The enter key is a key that allows you to tell the plotter that yes, I accept these values. And you'll notice that whenever we change a value, we'll always press the enter key to let the plotter know that this is what's accepted or this is what I want. The test button performs various types of test cuts. And then finally, the origin key is a key that sets the start point for each cut. So for instance, you'd move the head with the arrow keys, and then you press the origin key to allow the plotter to know that that's the start point or the new start point. As mentioned, the arrow keys have two functions. First, moving the head, and then second, changing the values on the LCD menu option when it calls for you to change the value. Let me show you how moving the head works when using the arrow keys. When the plotter is in the ready mode, by pressing and holding down any of the arrow keys, up, down, right, or left, it will move the tool head in that direction. By releasing that arrow key button, it will stop the movement. This will enable you to position the tool head to a desired spot or position. You can press two arrow keys simultaneously to move the head diagonally as well. Be careful to make sure which tool you're using, one or two, to position the tool head. I will cover this more in detail in the segment that covers the conditions. Suffice to say right now, when the head is in the lower left corner of the table, if tool 1 is off the table, then tool 2 is the current tool that is being used. You'll notice though, by pressing and holding any one of the arrow keys, it starts out slowly for a couple seconds, and then it sort of kicks in, moving at a faster pace. This allows you to move the tool ever so slightly to attain better position accuracy. For instance, if you're moving the tool to get it to a certain point where you need to start the cut. You can change this process in a menu function discussed later. Now, moving the head this way admittedly can be annoying at times, especially if you're trying to move the head to the other side of the table. So if you hold down any one of the arrow keys or a combination of the arrow keys to move the head and then just press the next key, it'll immediately kick it into fast pace and get it to where you want it to go. I thought it'd be a good time to introduce the origin key. What the origin key is all about is once your tool is in position, if you press the origin key, you're basically telling the plotter that you want to start right here. For a more mathematical description, it basically sets the current point or the tool location as the 0, point. Here's a little trick. Sometimes when the head is in the middle of the table and using the arrow keys, moving it is a little bit too slow, what you can do is you can hold down the enter and the down arrow key at the same time, and this will actually snap the head back into the lower left corner for you. The arrow keys can also be used for changing values. For example, to increase or decrease the force value of a condition is a matter of pressing the up or down arrow keys to obtain the desired value. Or, when changing the offset blade type, the side arrow keys can be used to cycle through the different blade types. Thus, any value that you want to change in any menu option is done by using the arrow keys. Next, we'll discuss the pause key. and how the pause key works in conjunction with other keys such as the next and function keys. The pause keys does two things. It enables you to get access to the menu options, and at the same time it'll pause the plotter from cutting. Now let's stop and look at the LCD for a moment. You may be wondering what all these numbers are about, and I'll cover these later on in the section when I cover the cutting conditions. But for right now, the only item here that I'm really interested in, I want you to pay attention to, is this ready word right here. This ready word is another word for what the status is. That can change. This displays when the plotter is in what is called ready mode. In other words, the plotter is ready to not only accept data from the computer, but cut it. When the ready word or status shows pause, then the plotter is in pause mode. The plotter will accept data and store it in the buffer, but it will not start cutting. The other status is when it's online. This just means that data is being sent to it and it's currently cutting. Once the pause key is pressed or is in pause mode, then we can just go ahead and cycle through the different menu options. Here I put it on pause. You can see it'll say pause on the screen. And then just press next, and it'll just keep cycling through the different menu options. Now the function keys come in here if you want to choose one of the menu options. For instance, I'll choose tool up and down. Let's take a real situation. What if something goes awry and you need to stop the job? The steps would be first to press the pause key. Once you step the pause key, then you would want to go ahead and press F2 to clear the buffer. Now, one of the things it's going to ask you is if you have stopped the data from being sent from the computer. Once you've confirmed that, then press the F2 key for clear. Then press pause again, put it back in ready mode. One thing to note is that when pausing the plotter, don't expect it to stop on the dime, so to speak. The plotter will actually wait until it finishes the current object and then go ahead and stop. The reason for this is that it's actually a protection in that the blade can be adjusted during that pausing, causing a possible tiny gap in the cut line at the point where the plotter was stopped. To show this, here I'm sending a job down to the plotter. Now it's not until I actually hit pause right here, then a couple seconds later that actually stops. The reason we show you this, we just don't want you to be disconcerted with the fact that it's not stopping right away. When thinking about the copy function or the copy key on the plotter, you might think that the copy function may be redundant since your software already has this type of function and it usually works better. And this can be true. The fact is that you really don't want to do multiple copies at one time using the copy function key on the plotter. Your software usually has a better way of handling copies like this because you can visually see the layout. So where can the copy button be a benefit to you? One of the key benefits is when you're cutting the same shape but on several different types of media, where each one needs a different cutting condition. To do this from the computer, you'd have to resend the job over and over again. The second benefit is when only one sheet at a time can be cut with the same pattern. Let's take an example where you need two different conditions to cut one piece of material. This is the example of sandblast. With sandblast, it's very hard to see the cut line, so when trying to remove the excess or trying to weed it, it's very difficult at times. But what if we could sandblast first with a pen and then cut it a second time around with a cutting tool? This would be the perfect solution. Then you could see the plot line of where the cut line is, and weeding the material would be much easier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install a cutter in tool number 2 and then a pen in the first tool holder, tool number 1. And then I'll assign the appropriate conditions, which we'll get into later, and then be able to plot and then cut. Watch how this is done. What I've done here is I've selected pen 1 and I sent the job. And now it's plotting out the pattern. Next, after the plot is done, I switch the pen heads to the cutting tool. Then I go ahead and make a copy, and I send the job. As you can see, the cutting tool is going right over the pen line. And there we have it. The weeding is easy because we have a pen pattern to follow. When talking about navigating through the control panel, I felt it necessary to give you some key menu functions that you're going to be able to use. These are important functions that you're going to either use on a daily basis or that you need to know in order to make the function of the control panel work for you, so there won't be any surprises, so to speak. First, I'd like to go over the commonly used functions. The first one, as we already discussed, is the clear buffer. Whenever you stop the plotter, you need to clear the buffer or else the plotter will keep going. The view function, which basically puts the head and the arm completely out of your way, so either you can load or you can view whatever you've just recently cut. There's the thick mode, which is a little function that you need to know whenever you're doing thicker materials so that you get nice, sharp, clean corners. Sorting basically is just that. It sorts the data for you and it makes things a little bit more efficient as it cuts along. Let's take a real situation. What if something goes awry and you need to stop the job? The steps would be first to press the pause key. Once you step the pause key, then you would want to go ahead and press F2 to clear the buffer. Now, one of the things it's going to ask you is if you've stopped the data from being sent from the computer. Once you've confirmed that, then press the F2 key for clear. Then press pause again, put it back in ready mode. The view function is a neat tool in that when you need to load the material or you need to view your drawing, it's an easy way of getting the bar and the tool head completely out of the way, moving it up into the upper right hand corner. In order to use the view function, the first thing you do is press pause, then next, and then F4 for view. The plotter will move its head and the arm completely out of the way so that you can load media. The sort function does exactly what it sounds like. It sorts the data. How does it exactly sort the data? Well, it takes the lines that are assigned to a certain tool number and groups them together. So it'll take all the lines that are assigned to pen 1 and group them together, and all the lines that are assigned to pen 2 and group them together. So that all the data that is assigned to tool 1 will cut at the same time. Same thing. All the data that's assigned to tool 2 will cut at the same time. What this does is it saves the head from switching back and forth during the cutting process, and it just makes things more efficient. Let me talk about the three settings. First, of course, there's off. Setting 1 is as described above, but what setting 2 does, which is what I like, is that it will go ahead and group them together, except they'll cut the lines assigned to a cutting tool last. So for instance, if you had a pen tool in tool number 1 and a cutting tool in tool number 2, it'll obviously plot everything first and then come back and cut, which is what you want. Same thing with a creasing tool. It will crease everything first and then come back and cut, which of course is what you want. Keep in mind that when you send the data down and it has to sort it, it's going to take some time. So don't get doing it is it's sorting the material or sorting the data. Now it's very easy to turn sorting on. First thing you do is press pause, then you press next twice, and then you press the F3 function and then press F4 for sorting. At that point you can just use the up and down arrow keys to change which value 1, 2 are off, and then just press enter after that, and you're all set and the plotter reinitializes. If you're cutting thick materials, the thick mode is a function that you're going to be used quite extensively. What happens when the cutting blade is coming up to a corner in a thick media? It tries to navigate around the corner. If it doesn't do anything else, what often happens, it'll chew up the corner. So that's what the thick mode function is all about. Watch this illustration as to how the blade travels when it reaches a corner. When it comes across and it gets to the corner, thick mode will lift it up, get it in the right direction, and then continue on. It's a great function for giving you nice sharp corners when you are cutting the thicker materials. A couple interesting points about the thick mode function is that first, it could be assigned to each condition. In other words, each condition can have this kind of operation when it goes around the corner. I'll show you how to turn this on in this segment. Second, it has two modes. Mode 1 and Mode 2 are different in that Mode 1 is a little bit more refined when it goes around the corner. Mode 2 is not so much refined. Mode 2 is for thinner materials that possibly don't need as much of that type of operation. And lastly, when assigning a thick mode to a condition, each time you change condition, it'll ask you if you want to overcut. And basically all this is that any time you have a start and stop point, it'll overcut it, so it'll have a nice clean cut. As I mentioned, each condition has its own thick mode function. In other words, each condition can have it turned on or turned off. Well, let me get you to that menu right now and how you do that. The first thing you want to do is press pause. Then press next twice. And we're going to look at that tool condition. So I'll go ahead and press F2 for tool condition, and then F1 for thick. And then I want to press F1 for thick number. And then I just use the side arrow keys as to which condition I want to change. And then I press the up arrow key to turn that condition on. Now condition 2. Then I just press enter and then pause. And as you look at the condition, see that blinking light? That means the thick mode is turned on for that condition. For further information on this subject, please review the following pages of the FCX2000 manual. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at our email address, which is tech.support@graphtechamerica.com, or call us at 888-318-3247.